access to technical competence, and we do have brilliant technical competence. There's a whole issue of the numbers of it, but I think one of the things that we are not doing as well as we possibly could is the leadership and management. And I know in my own organisation, I think the Novans here will attest to this, we spend a lot of our money on those that decide they want to be leaders and managers in the organisation, making sure that they are world class. So people going to INSEAD, the French Business School, going to London Business School, going to exec ed programs at Harvard Business School, which I've done, and others, and obviously stuff in Australia as well. But I think that is a real challenge. And for all of you trying to grow your business, there's technical capability, but you also need to have the leadership and management capability to scale up and to collaborate and work with others. Collaboration and competition is a hard one. When we're small companies, we are fighting for every dollar. And when there's another company out there that's doing something vaguely similar to you, the default position is don't talk to them. We can't afford to do this in the country. Business is too small. You really need to understand that sometimes you are going to be competing with people, and sometimes you are going to be collaborating with people. Nova is still now one of 4 major service providers to Defence. We are the only Australian-owned and operated major service providers. The other ones are, public companies with most of their ownership overseas. Companies like Jacobs that are US-owned and KBR. The real challenge though is being able to work with a whole lot of people, and I'm really proud of the fact that many of our most significant competitors are actually in that team with us delivering services in the Commonwealth. And we also have a broad cross-section of different industries. I noticed we've got several people here from PwC. PwC are partners in that team providing services to Defence. And for us to go from an engineering, outlook to work with accounting firms, I think is testimony to the fact that our managers, people like John Goblin, who led that bid, are able to think a little more laterally. For all of us as SMEs, I think that's really critical. Okay, I'm going to keep going because I figure I've only got about 5 or 10 minutes to go, and I want to get on to lot 14 and entrepreneurship. There are some great opportunities. There is a growing defence budget. We are now at about 2% of GDP. 5 years ago, we were at about 1.6%, the lowest since before the Second World War. Again, I think there is a real appreciation. I think people understand that the world is a changing place, and there are all sorts of threats and uncertainties in the world, and that is driving that. That's not necessarily a good thing, but if you're in an industry, if you are in the defence industry, there are positives there. One of the things that has really changed this is not only the recognition that industry is now a fundamental input to capability, or FIC, in defence terminology, and what that means is defence strategy is now includes industry as part of supporting the war fighting capability, and that has been articulated and supported in a far more significant way than it has for several years. The other thing is the increased importance of sovereign capability. Again, this goes back to Mr. Crystal Pine, who was Defence Industry Minister, has now moved into the role as Defence Minister, and we actually have another South Australian, Senator David Fawcett, who is the Assistant Defence Minister as well. There is a recognition at that political level, and it's coming into defence now, that we need to have capability in country that can support our defence forces at the sharp end. So there are great opportunities for those out there who decide to have a bit of a go. Let me move on in the interest of time and tell you. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I've got a couple of things here. Just a couple of keys to success. These aren't so much throwaways, but I think they're important. In fact, I'm not even going to talk to you. I'm going to let you read. Can everyone read all those or not? Yeah. Read them all. I'll just finish with the last one. It's be passionate about what you do and make sure people around you that you're passionate about what you do and you're passionate about them. I really, really think that's important, and this goes back to this issue of leadership. People want to be around optimists, and they want to be around people that see a great outcome. And I think as leaders of our organisations, and for those of you that aren't leaders yet but want to be, think about your passion and how you display that. I'm not talking about going over the top and doing the rah thing, but have a passion for what you do and what you're going to contribute and what you're going to achieve. leadership roles. Rightio. Let me talk about, there's Jim Whalley again, he's looking a little bit greyer. The Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. So the Premier, what have I got about 5 minutes? Am I allowed 5 minutes?
Yeah, keep going.
Sure. All right, let me talk about the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. So the Premier got me late at night one night at my place, it was about 12 o'clock. I'd have 5 bottles of wine with him, and he said, I've got a great idea. I said, oh, what's that, Premier? He said, I'm going to make entrepreneurship a central part of the state's economy, and we're going to have an Office of the Chief Entrepreneur and a Chief Entrepreneur. I said, oh, Premier, that's brilliant. Who's going to do that? And he turned to me and he said, you. And I said, oh, okay. So how much am I going to get paid? He said, nothing. Looking even better still. Then I said to him, and how many people have you actually asked? And he said, oh, Jim, don't worry, less than a dozen. Anyway, so I got this gig in, we were talking about July, finally got announced in August. Jokes aside, we had an organisation called Tech in SA, which was run by a guy named Joe Thorpe, who many of you will know. The work Tech in SA did was brilliant, really was good. There has been a bit of a change in the way we're going. So the emphasis has gone to a greater degree on the commercialisation and the entrepreneurship and creating that, as opposed to the technology. We're fortunate in that the whole of the Tech and SA staff are actually coming over to the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur. There's a lot of corporate knowledge, and as I say, a lot of really good work that was done by Joe Thorpe and his team. But basically what we are planning to do with the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur, I may as well show you, this one I've squashed in because it makes me look skinnier compared to my fellow entrepreneurial and advisory board members. But the whole concept of the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur is, sorry, I'll just go to the slide, is to inspire, equip, enable and celebrate. So we want to inspire the current generation of entrepreneurs, or the next generations of entrepreneurs. We want to identify them, we want to find where they are, whether they're a 10-year-old girl at school who's selling some software to her mates for social messaging or social media or something like that. And maybe isn't an entrepreneur yet, but they're a micro-entrepreneur and they've got some potential to go forward into the future. It could be the typical PhD masters out of Flinders, Uni of Adelaide, Uni SA, who's in biotech or in engineering or a whole range of other things. It could be a 60-year-old retired boilermaker from the Australian Submarine Corporation who's decided he wants to make really cool garden furniture and export it to the world. So the remit is broad. We want everything from Cooperpedy down to Mount Gambier. We want to encourage entrepreneurship, and we want to get it from schools all through the community. The next part of the strategy is to equip them, basically provide them with the skills so that we've got, in high school they are getting appropriate education and training and what a cash flow statement is, what a balance sheet is, how to do a pitch, how to market, and how to do some product development, all the way through universities. That they have got those mentors around them, they've got other entrepreneurs around them that can give them the guidance. We want to enable them, we want to make sure that the political environment is positive, that entrepreneurship is seen as a positive on all sides of politics and it's seen as contributing to the state. We want to make sure that the economic environment is there so that we have private equity, we have venture capital, we have angel investors, we have the cash to go into some of these organisations to help them lift and grow, or if they just bootstrap themselves, if they've got support from the banks and the credit card companies like I used to use to start my own business. We want to make sure that there's a social part of this. The associations of the Christopher Scases and the Alan Bonds of this world are no longer the case, that entrepreneurs are seen as heroes, that they are creating businesses, they are creating career opportunities and economic growth for our state. It's great that the footballers and the cricketers are on the front page of the paper, but occasionally some young person that's taken a risk and started a business and is now employing 20 people and growing that business and bringing benefit to South Australia, that they get some kudos as well for the hard work they've done and for the risks they have taken as well, and that they get that support from their family, from their friends and all those around them. We want to make sure the technical environment's there. So things like the old grass site, Lot 14, which I'll very briefly touch on, then I'm going to quit. provides the infrastructure, it provides the place where people can come and meet. That we've got high-speed broadband, so if you are in creative industries and you are doing, CGI for a movie in Hollywood, that your 4 hours of high definition CGI, 4K CGI that you've edited and created, you can blast that across the Pacific in about 15 minutes because you've got high-speed, secure data. And we want to make sure the legal environments are there in terms of job laws, employment laws, all those sorts of things. And I'd like to see things like superannuation, 1% of superannuation going into early stage capital instead of just bridges and roads. And I know lots of bridges and roads people here, we want that. But I'd like to see 1% of that going into early stage startups and giving people an opportunity, and hopefully some economic benefit also for those people that have money in their superannuation. And finally, I want to, this is part of the Inspire, is celebrate all those achievements as I talked about before. When you see someone who started a business and done well in your friend and family group, give them congratulations. When they're having a hard time, give them a bit of support and just encourage them and tell them they're doing a good job, because we do not do that in this country and we do not do it in South Australia. If you succeed, you can sometimes be a bit of a bright. You must have ripped someone off or done something wrong. And if you fail, no one wants to know you. And we genuinely need to change that attitude, because entrepreneurship is about failure. It's getting yourself up, dusting yourself off, and having another go. It is not about using entrepreneurship for evil purposes. And I'm making it quite clear when I talk about what we're trying to achieve with entrepreneurship, that it is not going to be used as an excuse for bad behaviour, for treating your employees badly, for not paying their superannuation, for treating your customers badly, for treating your suppliers badly. And as Chief Entrepreneur, I will be the first one to stare anyone that uses it as an excuse for that sort of behaviour. I will be the first one to stare them in the eye and plunge a knife into their heart and then hand them to the media on a platter. I really mean that. We can do some really, really good stuff here, and if we are going to make entrepreneurs heroes, and I'm going to make entrepreneurs heroes, then they need to do good, not evil, and that's really, really important. Okay, I'm going to finish here, except just to quickly say we've got a great capability in Lot 14. This is the old grass site. It's going to be a centre for entrepreneurial activity, people coming in and doing great things. We are going to be really focusing, the entrepreneurial stuff will cover all sections. When companies get to a certain size and they're in one of 4 verticals of defence, digital, space and creative industries, we are going to get them to stay there and just create that, make that a hub for all those sort of technologies and those sorts of markets. We have a great opportunity in South Australia. I think this is a window, probably 2.5 years. New government, really good support from the opposition in particular, and I speak regularly with Peter Malinauskas. He's really, really supportive. All officers of South Australians have got to get on the bus and get some urgency here. If we don't, we should be all rolled out and shot. I think we have got an opportunity to turn the state around and make this not only a great place for us to live in, but a great place for our kids to live in and for our kids to have careers and opportunities and do exciting things. Thank you very much.
Very much, Jim. We might leave questions till later. You going to hang around for drinks?
I'm actually going to have to go in about 45 minutes because I've got to go down to the airport to talk about the fact that the Vimy is, Dick Smith's going to take it back to the East Coast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Anyway, look, one of the things I did want to say is that one of the reasons we chose this venue is because Jim is a board member of ANI, the Australian Naval Infrastructure, and he is the landlord of all the shipbuilding that's going on in South Australia. And there's a massive amount of work going on expanding the surface shipbuilding facility right now, at the back of AWD, because they're going to build all the modules and assemble them and fit them out here for the 9 frigates. But they're about to let, I think, have they let the contract for the submarine construction yard? No, not yet. But I am led to believe that there's, so correct me if I'm wrong.
It's near.
There's a shed that's going to be built, which is such a size that Adelaide Oval will fit inside that shed.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So as you spend
well,
time,
certainly height-wise it's... Yeah.
Okay, so as you spend time here today, looking around this beautiful venue, understand the scale of work that's being done at the, that's going to be done at the Submarine Shipbuilding Yard when that's announced. Anyway, we'll move on to the second speaker today. Thank you very much, Jim. fantastic talk. I think you'll all agree. And I'd really like to thank you for taking the time to come and help us today. Our second speaker is the Defence Lead for GHD in Australia, based in Canberra. Damian Drain will be speaking to us today about the application of an innovative GHD Organisation Design program called Smart Seeds. Damian will tell us how smart seeds can be applied in particular to the defence industry. Damian hails from country New South Wales. He studied civil engineering at UNSW and he said, I had to tell everybody it was the best place to do civil engineering in Australia. And promptly decided to join the Australian Army where he spent the next 20 years. Along the way, Damian married and has 2 children still of school age. Damian is a keen track cyclist, which you'll see why he's such a great physique when he gets up here. Damian's final posting as Lieutenant Colonel was in Canberra with the Infrastructure Division with the Army. The 2 key projects he worked on there were the Land 121 fleet, the replacement of all B vehicles, truck and Land Rovers being supplied by Rheinmetall. 2, Damian was also the project director of new infrastructure for the Defence Logistic Transformation Program. The program oversaw an investment of several $1 billion upgrading and modernising a new logistics and maintenance system for defence. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Damian Drain.
Ladies and gentlemen, 20 years in the Army, certainly a little bit different from Jim, but I can say, Jim, I've ridden in most of the aircraft that you've probably flown and can attest to when you need a bit of help in a fast jet, there's no more reassuring sound than some of those pink bombs that he was dropping. So I want to talk to you a bit about today, not so much about myself, but more about what GHD and what we're doing in the infrastructure business and a bit more broadly. With a bit of a focus on it's the people that we have in our company that are delivering what we're doing. Myles over here, my companion, will then talk a bit more about smart seeds that John just alluded to and how we're generating and developing that next generation of people. One of the things that fascinates me about GHD, 90 years old this year, so I've been around a bit longer than I have, but there's only been 2 consistent clients that the company's had since day one, since it was founded. Melbourne Water's one, Defence is the other. One of the key reasons we obviously strongly believe that we've had that connection to Defence, been able to make sure that we're always bridging the gap. Our people are providing, listening to Defence what they want, and they're adapting. As you can see, a lot has changed in 1928. Been through a world war, a whole period. Jim and others have been serving the military. He went through the military in the 90s. In the 80s, it was a peacetime army. And the best I could attest to when I was serving was working up in remote Australia, building something for no reason at all. But that was the best that we had. And then found myself being recalled one day back to Sydney a couple of years later. So a couple of weeks later, found myself in East Timor in 99. And who would have thought that after all that, since that day, we would have nearly 17 years, 20 years of constant military deployments. In that though, whilst that has the downside, there's been amazing opportunities for industry, also industry and people to demonstrate some of the smart things that we can do. I'll talk about some of those things today. These are just a few of the projects I want to cover off very shortly. So yeah, GHD is involved in the SEA program, we call it that, looking at the new naval, quite a number of platforms there, the future frigate, the offshore patrol vessel, and the military operational support capability. It was a $2 billion project of naval infrastructure that we're currently designing. It's a single designer and arguably probably the largest infrastructure design project ever released by Defence since the Army moved up to Robertson Barracks in the early 90s. So quite a significant investment. Talk briefly about Land 17 and our role in that as a project manager. And more importantly here in Adelaide, our support and sort of facilities that we're designing and how we're doing that with the Maritime Surveillance Aircraft Replacement Project out at Rathembra. Close to your heart there, Jim. So the SEA program, I'm going to caveat this straight away. All the infrastructure for most of this program is still subject to parliamentary approval, so I'm going to be very careful about what we talk about because there are a number of contracts about to be released to industry. But just want to talk a bit more about what we've done. It is holistic. It is an amazingly large project being delivering and designing infrastructure right around Australia. The ability for us to do this and what we believe our people set us apart is to function as what we call one GHD, leveraging an amazing national network, drawing on the geographic abilities and the strengths of everywhere that we have. I was talking to young guys from Flinders University earlier, and talking about what sort of things can you do, and I said, the connectivity that we have these days, you could be talking to someone in Cairns, like we do, and have someone over in Perth designing something at HMAS Stirling. With the connectivity that you have, they're like they're just right next door to you on that same table. And that's the beauty of sort of the way we do business now. The other side is that for those who work in the defence capability space, the capability is constantly being updated. And at some point, the defence will make a decision, but they don't quite know yet what they want. It continues to evolve, and we certainly found that in the shipbuilding program. The answer to that is addressing complexity. How do you design infrastructure for something that you don't know what's coming and how it's going to look? The answer is to try and uncomplex it, get some clear messaging to your team so they can take ownership, link that back to a vision so they know at least what they're doing, their decisions are going down some path. But be prepared, you've always got to be testing and adjusting. The other side is say yes. There's no use arguing with the client at times. We're under strict time frames. The milestones that we have to achieve, it's important that you be able to just keep pushing through. Land 17. So for those who don't know what Land 17 is, it's artillery replacement. A number of phases for this project over the years. More importantly, with the project manager for defence overseeing the infrastructure implementation for essentially what this one is, a range of new ammunition, command systems and fire control systems that will support a new gun, particularly a lot of simulation. And key for that is, once again, this has been delivered right around Australia. So most of the projects you see being delivered for the Defence Force now, as part of that spend Jim alluded to, they're national projects. They're all linked. So the ability to be able to draw on that national office has once again placed us in a good stead. However, the other side is you've got to be able to represent the Commonwealth. 12 years ago, my first major job as a young major in the Army was actually here in Adelaide working with, funny enough, a lot of GHD personnel designing the hardened network army facilities out at Rathemborough. At that point, it was the largest design contract released since Appen, since we moved up north. Interestingly, we didn't quite know what we were doing, we knew what we were doing, but that was the largest project at the time, at a point when Defence was spending annually about $300 million on infrastructure, with a team of around 100 people based in Canberra. That hasn't changed. There is still a team, about 100 people in Canberra, delivering infrastructure to support all the capabilities, sort of things that were here and what Jim alluded to before. So it's very important as industry now, Defence have asked us to step up and represent their interest, be able to make decisions on their behalf to keep projects running through. Okay? And the spend, we've got $300 million 12 years ago to now it's about $2 billion a year and increasing up to $3 and $4 billion by the mid-20s. It's an amazing opportunity just in the infrastructure space. The PA, there's 7,000 Phase 2B, so Maritime Patrol Aircraft Replacement. GHD was the design for these facilities. Okay, what did we do different here? So anyone who's worked on a defence base will know that every project typically will come along and they're only worried about their own lane. They will swim in their own lane and very little think outside that lane. And for anyone who's been out to Errey, you'll have all these projects suddenly go on the top of each other, and this is the case right around Australia. That you'll put infrastructure, you'll put services in, and they're only concerned about that one project. So number one, it's very important to take the holistic view. Master plan the whole site like we did, so we're looking at what those future capabilities are going to be. Sometimes you don't know what they are. You've got to make your best guess working with your defence clients and the various capability teams working with CASG and go, well, what do we think it's going to look like? At least allow for it so you're not having to retrofit and you're doing abortive works. There are too many times that we've seen throughout the defence estate where you're doing abortive works. You build something 5 years later, you're tearing it down because you didn't quite get right what was going to come down the track. Sometimes unavoidable. Secondly, develop a learning culture. As I said, you don't quite know sometimes what that capability is going to look like. So it's a journey, both with the defence client and us as GHD. We develop those things that we're learning together and we adapt together. And finally, Just because that new fast jet comes in now doesn't mean it's going to look like that in 10, 15 years' time. It will evolve, and so must your facilities. So it's important that you be able to think about now, how are you going to adapt those facilities or build in the adaptation now so that they can modify to meet a changing capability requirement. And this one wasn't at the front, but many a time people will ask me, what's the most memorable project you did in defence? Most of my time in the last 10 years in the military was delivering infrastructure projects. This one here, JP 154, so Joint Project 154, counter ID facilities, and Narunga, Uwarma here in South Australia. This is part of a larger program of works delivered right around Australia. But this one $14 million project stuck out at me. GHD was a designer. I was actually in the Army, so client side, working with people like David Allen in the front here. The thing that set this project apart were two key elements. First of all, was Indigenous Aboriginal consultation with traditional landowners. It was very difficult. By the time we got through that point though, with the Public Works Committee, which hears all infrastructure projects over $15 million for the federal government or federal parliament, we went on record as setting the bar as to how to undertake consultation with traditional landowners. To the point, I should remember, when we had the Public Works Committee out on site, going through the project and what we're going to deliver, one of the local elders just said, look, just approve the project now. We hate these terrorist bastards, so just approve it, please. So we really got them on side on that. I sort of asked him to do something nice, but asked him to say that. But most importantly, remember who you're delivering the project for. From the time we started designing to the time we delivered, everyone had one focus only. This project saves lives. Everything we do had an intrinsic link to, at that particular time, our soldiers in the Middle East, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. So it was real, and you got to see that. The other aspect, and that continued right on. So Fulton Hogan won the contract to build these facilities. So right through the time to when they built it, every single person that went on that site was briefed as to why that project was important. So it saves lives. So I can't emphasise that enough. Always remember who you're delivering your project for, particularly in the defence realm. It doesn't matter whether you're doing a counter ID facility or you're building accommodation in a new shipyard. Every little thing you're doing for defence, contributes to the capability and defence of Australia, and it's an amazing thing to be in. As I said to some of our other grads and other people, you get to see and do things in defence that you'll never get to do for any other client in Australia or the world. Some of it's pretty cool, and you get to do some really cool things, like put bombs on their failures. I'm sort of fascinated by that, Jim. Rightio. But how do we bring this experience across to the rest of industry? So it's about integrating what we already do with defence and giving things back to the defence industry, whether it's a shipyard, or more importantly now, how do we integrate our people and bring those skills to the fore? So first of all, CivMag, it's a shipyard. So GHD was commissioned to undertake the architectural, civil, structural, building services and infrastructure planning at this new ship assembly hall. We developed a fully integrated team that was able to address all the key challenges. We provided smart solutions to meet client problems, and at times the client didn't quite know how they had to look. For example, try gaining approval for a building that covered the size, that was built like the size if it was larger than the building code allowed for. So we all had to do wind testing and engage the service of specialist engineers to be able to help us get through that. Building sway issues with such a large building were an issue, but we managed to push through that with smart people coming up with smart ideas. Ultimately, I think we found about $16 million cost savings just by getting smart people having smart ideas to say, hey, let's try something different. The other defence industry one we're currently working on, the Military Vehicle Centre of Excellence. This is for Rheinmetall in South East Queensland. This is where they'll be building the new, recently announced Land 400 Phase 2 Boxer that Rheinmetall's putting out, or the Combat Reconnaissance Vehicle. It also undertakes the testing and commissioning for the latest range of Land 121 vehicles delivered on what's called Phase 5B, which is essentially logistics and training trucks. The innovation came in a number of parts. First of all, I'll tell you now, it is the only facility fully enclosed in Australia, probably the world I think, that is capable of a vehicle testing 30 and 35mm rounds inside. You won't find another facility in Australia that can do that. So how do we do it? One of the things that GHD has, we have an amazingly large team of people, particularly sitting around South East Queensland and here in Adelaide, that design ranges. from everywhere, every range, from a soldier firing his or her weapon, their rifle, to a fast jet dropping bombs. We designed them. So we were able to draw on that extensive years of knowledge and experience of our people to be able to design this. Recently, we actually designed another indoor test fire facility. There was a lot of testing and adjusting for the Defence Science and Technology Group, another indoor test armour fire facility. So this was an amazing accomplishment. The other side is the nearest house to this is 300 metres away. If anyone has heard of Boxer or a light armour vehicle fire its weapon systems, they're not quiet, trust me. They are very noisy. So that for us was an amazing achievement. But it's not just about that wind tunnel, the firing point and the underground firing system. That system also supports our people, the production facilities. So how you're integrating that test fire facility into the production facilities for the Boxer. How do you integrate it? It's coming up with smart ideas, knowing that potentially Ryman Town may want to build other vehicles out there in the future, who knows? So being able to adapt those facilities once again is very important. So integration. We've probably spoken a little bit around integration now. Traditionally, most people look at GHD as an engineering services company, and we have traditionally, predominantly, we still are engineering-led and we're heavy. But we've branched out into a lot of other areas as well. Buying Woodhead a few years ago certainly increases our ability in the architectural space. To recently, we have an advisory business that is now getting heavily involved in the business case side of what we do for defence. So we're broadening our position right across that value chain in the defence infrastructure space. So doing the business cases that set the scene for the follow-on infrastructure work to come. I won't talk too much about digital. My colleague Myles here will cover a little bit more about that when he goes into a bit more depth about smart seats. But suffice to say, we're excited about the challenges and how we're branching out. But how do you integrate across sectors as well? So not just defence we work in. Defence is just a small part of what we do right across our industry. But it's actually a very important part as well. But the way we do things is still not much different. So you talk about a smart construction site. We work with our cons partners to develop different things. One of the things we did on the smart construction site was use a range of sensors and applications, tagging loads, looking at things, making sure the sensors were picking up vibrations or dust loads. Particularly from this application, or even a defence application, urban encroachment's an amazing problem that you have to deal with these days. You can't avoid it. So by placing sensors to sort of give you an alert when something's not going to go right and Mrs. Smith next door is about to get onto the phone to a local parliamentarian to complain again, you probably want to get on top of that sort of thing. So the digitisation and using smart things and smart technology to be able to help you stop those sort of things is increasingly becoming very important.